All right, Ed, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. And of course, yet again, it apparently has happened. The beheading, as you've been hearing with Ed and John, the beheading of yet another American, Steven Sotloff, and of course the terrorists in the video reportedly saying to Barack Obama, once again with a message to Barack Obama, just as your missiles continue to strike our people, our knives will continue to strike the heads of your people. We will be joined momentarily here by Sergeant Michael Golembesky, a retired staff sergeant in the U.S. Marine Corps. He was in Afghanistan. He's going to have a lot to say about what we are all finding out as time unfolds here. And again, another beheading, and at the same time, threatening a British journalist, David Haines, just like during the beheading of James Foley, Steven Sotloff was threatened, and now during the beheading of Steven Sotloff in the video, they have a threat made against a British journalist, David Haines. So that's where we are right now, and it's another act of war against the United States in the minds of many. And yet we continue to have a State Department and a president who claims that ISIS is not at war with the U.S. and that we are not at war with ISIS. So, you know, that's up for debate and up for discussion. We're also going to talk during the course of the show to Bud McFarland, former National Security Advisor to President Ronald Reagan. We'll get his input into what's going on here, his take on the situation. Tom DeLay will also join us. We spoke earlier with Senator Ron Johnson prior to the revelation of this video, the beheading video, but we did speak extensively about the president's lack of a strategy when it comes to ISIS and the president's trip to Wisconsin yesterday. We'll have that later on in the show. But Sergeant Michael Golembesky, retired staff sergeant in the U.S. Marine Corps, has written a great book called Level Zero Heroes. And it tells the story of a mission that he and his special op Marine colleagues were involved in. And yes, special op Marines, it's something that I'm going to ask him about. But first, of course, we'll have him weigh in on ISIS, the threat of ISIS, and the horrific video released earlier today. But first, let's watch this from his helmet cam. Powerful stuff, and we welcome in right now Sergeant Michael Golembesky, retired staff sergeant in the U.S. Marine Corps and author of Level Zero Heroes. We'll put it up there, the story of U.S. Marine Special Operations in Bala Murghab, Afghanistan. Did I say it right?
You said it right.
Thanks for coming up. Pleasure to meet you, sir.
Me.
Before we get to your story, the unfortunate video released today, just weeks after James Foley's beheading, we now have another beheading of Steven Sotloff, apparently, and the message to Barack Obama, another direct message from the terrorists in the video. Just as your missiles continue to strike our people, our knives will continue to strike at the necks of your people. When you see that, someone in your position, someone who's been to Afghanistan, someone who's fought the war, someone who's done all the wonderful things you've done to serve this country, what do you hear when you hear that?
First, the parents and the family member of this guy is, my heart really goes out to him, because it's a horrible way to see somebody you love die, kind of just put on display there, and have their life basically taken by a bunch of cowards in such a brutal fashion. For guys that have served, that are combat veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan, this is nothing new to us. This type of brutality is something that we've all experienced, firsthand. The mentality in the Middle East is you get a lot of factions like this, and for warfighters, we don't see these groups, we don't see ISIS as a separate group from Hamas or the Taliban or Al-Qaeda down in Yemen. We see them all as the same problem, the same issue, and they're a bunch of thugs is what they are. They're cowards. Anyone can slaughter an unarmed person. Okay, that doesn't establish anything. That doesn't set any precedents. What they're really trying to do is just a shock factor. They're trying to shock the Western world into fear. And terrorists, that's basically what it comes down to. The weapon is fear. If you can put fear into a population, then you have control over them. Inadvertently, you have control over them. But for the war fighters, for the U.S. service members, these guys are nothing but a bunch of chumps.
Do you, when you hear the commander-in-chief, as he said on Thursday, tell ISIS, us, the world, we have no strategy on ISIS? We don't have a strategy yet, when today we find out his daily briefing has been on ISIS for over a year. There have been hearings in the Congress on ISIS for 3-4 years. And to come out on Thursday and say we have no strategy yet, you know, especially what's been going on that we all know about in Iraq recently. Again, a man in your position, what when you hear your commander-in-chief say that, what do you think?
You don't do that. You don't say stuff like that. You are the president. You are the top of the chain when it comes to military might and power and influence in the world. Okay? Regardless of how the American people may picture the U.S. these days, you know, a lot of it has to do with the way that the media portrays American superiority and dominance. But make no mistake, the U.S. is the greatest force on the planet. The U.S. is the greatest nation to ever have blessed this planet. And in an even darkening world, we are still the beacon of hope. And the president needs to reflect that, which he did not.
And of course, David Cameron, by contrast, in the UK, comes out over the weekend, has a press conference, then comes up with a plan to keep his homeland safe with talking about passports and flights not being allowed in, etc. And John Kerry was in Nantucket windsurfing on Monday, and the president was in Wisconsin, Milwaukee, trashing Republicans and people who are successful in business. And again, where's the strategy? You know,
it's that type of behavior from our higher echelon is completely unacceptable. And just look at the world, look at the state we're in right now, look at all the different hotspots, look at all these different factions that are brazenly coming up and trying to establish themselves. What is that saying about how we are still inserting ourselves throughout the world? Are we still the same nation we once were, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago? Look at the evidence.
Yeah. You, though, and the Marines and the men and women who enlist to serve our country, I believe you are as good as, or if not better than any generation. I mean, I think it's unreal what you guys do. And everybody who puts the uniform on, I've said this to them, whether I agree with them politically, disagree with them politically, whatever, you're a better person than I am for putting on the uniform. And I mean that sincerely, but I hope you know that, and I hope you feel that way, because you're not appreciated enough, I don't think, certainly when you look at the VA and everything that's going on, and it's just horrible. Your book, Level Zero Heroes, you talk about this mission, a mission that took place, although as we were talking before, it's a remote part of Afghanistan, yet 5 miles away, it had electricity and everything else. Nonetheless, it was a very dangerous mission. It went awry, and the whole mission changed. Explain for the folks what they're going to read about in the book.
The book is unique in the fashion that it is the first book that has been written about Marine Corps Special Operations. A lot of people in the U.S. don't even know that the Marine Corps has a component now in Special Operations, and it was stood up in 2006. Prior to that, it was just Navy SEALs, Army Special Forces, Ranger Battalion, and then your Special Ops guys that came out of the Air Force. This is something new, and this whole concept of U.S. Marines now operating under the Special Operations umbrella is something new, and this book is really the first look into the guys, the team, the character of the individuals that are on these teams, and the training and the responsibilities that they are given. They can sway the way of war. With the type of influence that they have on the battlefield.
And this mission was to what? To capture?
This mission was just like many of the other missions that the Special Operations guys were getting in Afghanistan. It's to go there, you counter up with your Afghan counterparts, which in our case was the Afghan Army, and it is to advise them, is to help them gain routine, gain stability, and become a fighting force, so that eventually we can hand the mission to them and we can pull out. I mean, that's always the master plan of doing it.
Doesn't always work out
It's
that
not
way.
until you get
Yeah.
down into the weeds
Yeah.
that you realize, that, as they say, the devil is always in the details of actually getting stuff done. So the story, and the way that I wrote it, that I wanted, because the whole situation in Afghanistan, it's a very large, complex situation. It's hard for your average American to wrap their head around because it involves different countries. It seems like the mission set changes all the time. You have the embedded corruption in the Afghan government. I wanted to take that larger picture of Afghanistan and shrink it down into a story with people that have names and families, and when people read it, I wrote it in a way so that it doesn't have a lot of heavy military jargon in it.
No, you could relate to the average person, could
Yes.
relate to it, feel it, get involved with the characters
Yes.
and the real people involved.
And
Yeah.
then when you're done with the story, you actually have a better understanding of the bigger picture. And good, bad, wrong, or indifferent, it's really
all
up to
there.
the reader to decide for themselves.
Let me ask you, how much have your hands been tied? I remember when we first went into Iraq under GW, and Colin Powell made a remark. They're shooting at us from a mosque, so we can't fire back. This was early on in 03. And I said right then and there on the air, I was at WABC at the time, if my son was in Iraq right now and you tell me that, you're going to tie his hands behind his back, I'll come over there and pull him home by his hair and you could throw me in jail. I said, this is insane. And it's only gotten worse from there, right?
And I actually, it's funny you should mention that, because I actually had to drop on a mosque in Golembesky. Now, from what people would normally think is a mosque, you had the minaret. It's a very
Right.
elaborate building.
This was a makeshift,
yeah, when you get
yeah.
into what you can throw up a flag and just call it a mosque.
Right,
but as we're targeting this building, I needed to reach back, and I couldn't generate the grid for the bomb coordinates for it. So I had to reach back to the forward operating base and get the coordinates, and I couldn't relay what I was trying to target. And I was trying my hardest to avoid saying the word mosque.
Yeah, otherwise they would have called
As
it
soon as you
off.
say that, all the flags go up.
It just makes your mission and you guys so much more admirable, and it makes me so much more disgusted at our administration and our military for what they do to you guys and tying your hands. But you're a true American hero. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck with the book. The book Level Zero Heroes, ladies and gentlemen. Pick it up and read the story of Sergeant Michael Golembesky and his great men involved in that mission. When we come back, folks, it's going to be the Malzberg panel once again. Don't go away. Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax Television.